Welcome to the Rational Growth Experience, where every week we talk about how concepts from personal growth and spirituality come together in our experience of our everyday lives.
Awesome. So welcome to TRG's episode. I believe this is episode 8, and we have a special guest, my mentor, Bryan Casella, and he took out from his busy day, and basically this guy is he is an absolute rock star on what he does. He has a community called Modern Success of close to 300 individuals. They are absolutely amazing, and kind of dive deep into that, Bryan, of like who you are.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. Funny that I'm episode number 8. I love Kobe Bryant, number 8. So funny how that works, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going to talk modern success, man, modern success basically came originally as just a way for me to pretty much condense everything that I had learned from inception, meaning getting into real estate from that moment up until probably year 5, and as I grew getting into real estate, because when I got into real estate, for the people that don't know, it was a complete 180. I was previously a professional athlete. I played basketball overseas for a couple of years. After my second ankle surgery, it really messed with me mentally, and I couldn't pass physical examinations anymore to get a new contract. So I had to stop playing, basically. I got the rug ripped out from under me, and I ended up getting into real estate. So completely 180, right? From stone cold, dedicated my life to basketball, to now I have to wear a suit, go into an office environment and learn sales and deal with people. It was just, uncharted territory for me. And as I was going on my journey, I took an unorthodox method or methodology of getting better. Yes, I studied real estate. Yes, I studied sales, but I studied so many other subjects, and I started connecting a lot of dots, meaning a lot of other stuff that I was studying and things that I was learning, and as I was developing as a human being just in general, and then me being able to channel or inject that into, in this specific example, real estate or sales, I noticed I was getting better results. I was getting faster results. So modern success really became, let me take all of that and put it together into one book. We can call it the book of life, written by me through my experience. And all I did was, a lot of stuff that people have been talking about as theory for years, I was taking those concepts and theories, applying them, and then basically giving people a Cliff Notes version in a simple fashion of my experience. So I'm taking concepts that people normally read about and fantasize about, I'm using them in my life and in the field, and then I'm reporting back to you saying, these are my results with these concepts. This is what I believe is the best about them. This is what I believe is the worst about them. And that's why, as you're experiencing, Eric, and many other people do, it's such a different type of program, because I'm basically marrying the best of both worlds, practical application and simple concepts, but also, like you were talking about, Dylan, before we fired this up, mindset, but actual mindset, not fluff, not motivation, not positivity, not hoorah and all that crap, actual mental concepts that you can apply into your life that, give you a boost, give you more confidence, give you more self-esteem, give you better communication, and all these things that are universally applicable. And that's what I'm about. Yes, I do real estate. Yes, I help people with that, but I'm all about developing skills and you getting tools that you can apply universally. Because ultimately, when you're limited to just one thing, you're not versatile and you can't expand. So if something like this happens, coronavirus, you're screwed.
True, man. So you got me thinking a little bit, hearing more about your journey, because I've recently just learned of you through Eric, actually. So I probably didn't even know of you until about a week ago, and then I started watching a couple of your things just to kind of get an idea of who you are. And so I think you said some really interesting things in terms of studying other practical mindset application. So what was your kind of approach to that? Because as you said, you had the rug pulled out from underneath you, so your reality kind of changed in an instant. So you had to probably make some game time decisions and look at things that maybe weren't comfortable to look at. So I'm curious that part. What was your journey into exploring those more harder mindset things or barriers maybe?
Well, as I started analyzing things from the outside, and even through my experience in basketball, I noticed, even at the level that I made it to in basketball, which is basically one below the NBA, you have a ton of people on the court and being traded and playing that are impeccable with their skill set, we can say, and they're top of the top. But I noticed what separated the Kobe Bryant and the Michael Jordans from everybody else, or the LeBrons and Dwayne Wades, was what's going on between their ears, right? Their image of themselves, how they think about themselves. You know, when a moment arrives, like, hey, we need somebody to take the final shot, that process going through their mind that leads them to the decision to say, give me the ball, right? Fuck coach's play, give me the ball. I'll take us to victory, versus other people who might have the same skill, but when that moment comes and arrives, they back away like this, right? So right away, I saw that early on. So getting into real estate, I saw the same thing. I was observing people who naturally had more talent than me to sell, yet I was making more sales than them because I was putting in more effort. I wasn't letting the little obstacles stop me. I wasn't letting, you know, my little emotional ups and downs stop me. I really just kind of clicked into some of that simplistic stuff that I was given, and I just was like almost monkey see, monkey do. So originally I started with, like, you know, Anthony Robbins and that kind of stuff, because that led me down a path of studying subjects like neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis. And with those two particular subjects, I really enjoyed them because they basically revolve around two things: communication and the mind. And that to me was always fascinating. I'm certified in both, right? So I'm a practitioner, a master practitioner in hypnotherapy, and also as a neuro-linguistic programmer, right? Then I looked at the subject, which I think is called evolutionary psychology, which has to do with the social aspect of the human being. How men relate to women, how women relate to men, how people relate to each other in social settings, what makes us tick, what attracts us, what repels us, right? So just those two subjects alone, I really explored deeply, man. And when I started trying to present that information to people and kind of tell them, hey, like, come over here, I'm studying this, they would immediately say, you're wasting your time, right? Just stick to sales, stick to real estate. It's all about that. Yet what we referenced in the beginning, I noticed that was helping me tremendously. So as you follow my journey, first 6 months or year of my company, I'm off to the races and I'm getting ahead of everybody. And not just on the sales side, my confidence is improving faster than everybody else's. My communication in general, right? My emotional intelligence, my results outside of the office, right? In my personal life, being able to create new relationships, new business partnerships. I'm just firing on all cylinders, right? At that time, video was still pretty new, and I jumped on it, and I was just video, video, video. When everyone else is saying, dude, number one, why are you making video? But number two, how are you producing video so consistently? So it gave me such an edge, man. And it really just, I noticed right away, it was almost like I was a racehorse in a turtle race, in a sense, because I was able to do so much. But to me, because of what I had developed in my mind and what I had learned, to me, that was my normal, like, mode of operation. I wasn't doing anything special. I was just realizing more of my potential as a human being, versus everybody else who has the potential of being in sixth gear. They're stuck in first gear and they're not aware that they can shift into second, third, fourth, and fifth. So to me, a lot of that personal development stuff, if used properly, is almost like a guide to get you into that next gear. And once you do, and you're there, you start realizing, whoa, I have so much more potential. I can do so much more. The process of getting there, though, man, is a lot of man hours of yourself invested. And I'm sure we'll talk about that. But one of the main things that I did in the beginning, dude, was really confronting and shattering and handling all of my deepest insecurities, man. Because that to me was the biggest kind of window and door to take it to the next level.
So talking about those insecurities and those outside voices, how did you kind of limit that from really diving so deep into your mentality where it didn't affect the growth that you were doing?
Well, everywhere I looked, guys, I saw that at some point, like, as an example, this is a phrase that I learned years ago that I always tell people. A lot of times the problems that we think we have is merely a symptom of the real problem. Okay. So let's say you have a supposed fear of cold calling, right? That's not the problem. That's a symptom of a real problem, which is some sort of probably insecurity in regards to being rejected. So I said, look, this for many people, including myself, is a huge barrier that stops you on every level, whether it's in the business in this example or outside of the business. So what I had to do was overexpose myself to that and say, okay, the only way to handle this is to attack it head on. So I said, you know what? Instead of shying away from rejection, I'm just going to straight up run up to it and slap it and tackle it, because that's what I have to. So what I did was I oversaturated myself with rejection. I was making anywhere from, and this is hand dialing, anywhere from 100 to 150 cold calls, hand dialing a day. I was knocking a minimum 100 doors. I was going out during my lunch breaks and 2 or 3 additional nights a week, not drinking, right? Not partying, but just approaching strangers, men, women, everybody, right? It didn't matter because it wasn't just about going out and getting girls. It was about becoming very good as a communication practitioner. So you can imagine overwhelming myself, in a sense, in quotes, because I don't like that word, with
Right.
so many conversations. You're stacking up so many rejections that, dude, within a week or two, I'm already seeing a difference. I'm still getting nervous, we can say, approaching, but now my reaction when I get rejected after 2 weeks is completely different. You know why? Because of the experience that I've gathered. So much of the thoughts and fears that we have behind some of these things like rejection is what we think is going to happen. But when you expose yourself to 100 or 200 experiences of rejection in a week, you can now formulate with the data that you receive in return a proper analysis of it. So you can say, look, I've been rejected 100 times, and really it only stung once or twice from
Mm-hmm.
2 girls. The other 98 times, it wasn't even that bad. And after you're exposed to it for a while, and now you understand that that's just a part of life, and you don't react to it anymore. I'm not the effect of anymore. So when I look at something like that, it was just, wrestling with it and just facing it head on when most people will run for the hills. So as I'm now exposing myself to this rejection, I can start taking some of these concepts. Like, let's say you learn something in self-help, which is like a belief system, right? This is your new belief system for rejection, as an example. I'll say, okay, for the next day, I'm going to do 50 approaches where I can possibly be rejected. I'm going to do these 50 approaches adopting that belief system that, hey, every rejection, let's say as an example, it's every rejection, I get stronger. That's my mantra for the day. Every rejection, I get stronger. So now when I accumulate 50 rejections, by the end of the day, as I continuously tell myself that mantra, going through these rejections, I can actually look and write on a piece of paper and check my state of mind and say, at the end of the day, well, since I told myself that and I put my attention on it, hey, I do feel stronger because I know I'm more resilient. I made it through the day and actually did all 50. So I am stronger, right? Then the next day I can try another one. And I'm literally picking and choosing until I find the one that clicks with me the most. That's how I took, as a real life example, how I took some of these concepts, these theories of self-help, and applied them in the field and in my life to get the results. So when everyone else was just reading and feeling good, I was actually taking them and experimenting with them like a kid in a candy store. Because like if you give these experiments, guys, to kids, they'll run with them and they'll do it. Like, hey, go talk to 20 girls at school. They'll do it and tell them this because they don't have that, hypnotized, conditioned mind that we do as adults where we've been told you can't say this, you can't do that. They're a lot more raw, right? They don't have that shell like we've built up. So it's literally more so this process is ripping away a lot of these false concepts and beliefs that we've adopted that we use as adults, but some of them are so buried in our mind, we don't even realize them until we start going through these processes. So it's pretty interesting once you expose yourself to this, because then all that stuff comes to the surface and now you can handle it.
Interesting. So you just basically took all of it and just ran with it. You just freaking did it. Like you said, kid in a candy store, you had no barrier of, okay, this is bad. This is how it's going to work for me. So that got me thinking a little bit with, so obviously studying some of the like neuro linguistic programming and maybe such like that, you probably ran across the neuroscience of it all and how that programmed you over time. How would you say that after doing these experiences and taking the information and applying it, maybe also adding, did you do other things like meditation on the side? Because I know that's also something that's very common ways of teaching, sort of like a rewiring of the subconscious. Like what did you do in that realm? Or did you just purely just took it and ran and then just over time I guess what I'm wondering is how did it shape you over time? Like, did your old way of thinking of who you were shifted after then having all those experiences, or how did that change you?
A lot, man. And that's a great question. And there's a lot I can discuss about that. The first thing is kind of like as an experiment. The first thing I started doing was like this example of me just jumping into rejection. I started taking concepts and beliefs, because if I'm going to break this down in like a diagram so people get where I'm coming from before I explain this, Most people deal, if we're going to talk like the tree of getting to the core of a human being, and you learn this in NLP, most people deal with the top parts of the tree, which is like thoughts, ideas, and actions, right? That's all they concern themselves with. But you got to get down to the nitty gritty if you really want to rip out the root and like reprogram yourself, as you stated, Dylan. What you want to do is look at your identity, values, and beliefs. Okay. So as kind of like a way to hijack that system in a sense and have fun with it, I said, okay, what I'm going to do over these next couple of years, I'm going to start taking some of these concepts that I was given as a kid and test them in real life. Right. So maybe something we would hear is, don't talk to strangers, right? Strangers are bad. Right. So I would start talking to strangers, going door to door and cold calling. And then through my experience, I would make an assessment to test that belief and philosophy that I was given as a kid that I had adopted. So I started going through that laundry list of things. And anybody, if they just sit there and think like, what do I think about money? Money is the root of all evil, right? All these cliche sayings that if you just write them down and you start field testing them like this, and then taking the data that you get, it will be so easy for you to start reprogramming or calling BS with real life evidence that you've accumulated on some of these beliefs and philosophies, dude. It's crazy. And that's literally how it started, bro. Even as I was just barely scratching the surface on some of these subjects, that was how I combined theory and concepts and beliefs with real life stuff. Because to me, again, it excited me. I learned and read. I was like, dude, I can change the way I believe about things. I'm not stuck to one identity. So it wasn't that I believed it necessarily in the beginning, but it was more like, whoa, this is interesting. Let's see if this is legit. I'm going to test this. And that's how I did it, man. And then I started just debunking stuff like money's the root of all evil, debunked it. Don't talk to strangers, right? They're bad, debunked it. Another one I would hear is most people are mean. Most people are rude. I heard that in sales before I started calling and knocking. And then through my own research, I found that it was about 99% of people were not bad. It was only 1% that would go out of their way to be rude to me. Meaning if I talked to 100 people, one or maybe two was really a dick to me. And when I started looking at that, I was like, are people really bad? I was like, no. So why would somebody give me that information? That doesn't make any sense. So that tells me, okay, they're probably not a credible source to get information from and advice, right? So again, through this testing, you start realizing all this stuff. You brought up meditation. That's amazing because what meditation does is, as an example, a lot of people have issues with calming and quieting the mind. They have that constant chatter. Meditation is great for that. That's why meditation for me has been one of the biggest contributing factors for me to be calm and poised in any situation. So as I live my days now, because I still meditate probably 20, 25 minutes every morning, as a practice for me, it's be in a constant almost state of meditation throughout the day to where my mind is quieted. I'll test myself. I'll drive. I have no music, no podcast sometimes. And I just kind of sit in that silence. I'm aware in a sense, but I'm in the silence. I'm not just floating with random thoughts. I'm really just trying to focus on nothing. So it's pretty cool because it's been such a journey to get to that level. When I first started, I had to literally use those binaural beats because my mind was just all over the place when I started meditating. So you track your progress with this stuff, which is really cool. And I just tested everything, dude. So in a simplistic fashion, I think that's the best answer I can give you because that's kind of how the beginning stages of this thing happened before I ever started teaching people. And I started just exploring life and some of these concepts myself. And the more I did it, the more excited I got because it was just shattering all these old beliefs that I had. And it was really just shattering like my current reality because I said, holy shit, what I thought was the world isn't. And then you would get to the next level, then you shatter something else. And then you're just like, oh my God, this is incredible. Except my issue was I was trying to convert everybody. So I'm trying to I'm like, hey, mom and dad, you got to do this. This is incredible. And they're like, dude, get the hell out of here, you nut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was my issue. But, and then I stepped it back and I learned from experience, you can't force people to do this stuff. But that's how it started, man. And it just really got interesting for me because it was so exciting, right? It was so exciting. And then as I started getting in contact with people and they started learning a little bit from me, you start seeing the changes, just like with YouTube. Some of the messages I get from people who aren't even on my Modern Success or anything, or who are just listening to my podcast and my videos are like, wow, man, like I've been making some big shifts in the way that I think and how I move, at a really core level. And that was cool. So that really kind of inspired me to start doing this stuff too.
So you got me thinking. So obviously it's very funny you mentioned the whole, you're trying to convert the people around you. I definitely had my phase with my family where I was like, "Oh my gosh, like guys, you got to try this." And then definitely backfired and I was like, "All right, got to take a step back." So it got me thinking like what was that like transition like? Cuz at some point you're building yourself, you found your flow almost. You're kind of in it. You've got like business, you got all this stuff setting up, but what was that transition? Cuz like into actually teaching other people for you? Was it were there like a lot of people asking you, or was it just something you're like, I got to share this, like this is it's not doing me like it's doing me well, but I'm sure it could help tons of other people. Like what was that like for you, that transition?
Yeah, great question. Couple things I can comment on. Number one, in the beginning, I think I was a little bit naive, thinking that I said, well, if I have access to this information, everybody does. So everybody knows this. And
Mm-hmm.
then within a couple of months, I started realizing, okay, everybody isn't on the same path like I thought.
Right.
Because to me, maybe it was my athlete's mentality. It's, dude, you want to be competitive and be the fucking best at everything you do. So I was taking this stuff and I'd get a book and I'm like, dude, I need to apply everything and read it as quick as possible. Right. I need to be number one in my company. It was just that hunger, and being in athletics my whole life and my teammates being the same way. I thought everybody was wired like that. Right. So that kind of was an aha and a note that I stored in my head. Okay, I got to help people. Right. Because you can inspire this in people for sure. You can help them find their competitive like spirit or spark. Right. The second one was, as I started growing my social media, it became very frequent. Hey, do you have a session? Do you do a training? Do you have a product? Like I think when I released my first door knocking product, about it was at least 2 or 2.5 years of me producing content. I had gotten probably, I think I had counted 70, I think it was 77 or 78 requests from people, private requests. Do you have a door to door or cold calling product? I would love to buy it if you did. And the first 30, I'm like, what the hell, dude? Like, just do it. Like I wasn't even thinking. I was like, dude, just go out and do it. Like
Yeah.
I've given enough for you guys to do it. Like the rest, you kind of have to learn. Then after 50, 60, I'm like, okay, maybe I have something here. And I didn't know what I was doing, so I just got a friend of mine who does video and we just put it out. Then the third thing was I started seeing, I was getting direct, we can say, progress messages, pictures, posts, videos from people who are applying things and sending it to me like every month or 2 months or 3 months, and just seeing their evolution. Even like Kevin on my team, who's been with me for a while now, that it really dawned on me, okay, maybe there is something here, right? And that's kind of when we can say it even shifted into my purpose of, okay, I'm going to help people, right? Where before it was just, I want to make money and be free, financially free. Now I really want to help people. And that's why from that turning point, probably I would say was year 4, roughly, because I pretty much started doing video right when I started real estate, basically about year 4. So 3 years ago, I can say is really when that transition happened, where I said, okay, I'm really going to start doubling down on the stuff and, making some products, but really focusing on the coaching. And that's really where I funnel everybody in, because it's very affordable, but it's also kind of a place where I can put everybody around a campfire and we can have discussions like this, which I think are the best.
Yeah, and you're around people you want to be around, Some like what you said, not everyone thinks that same way. So if you got other hungry people looking for information, it just
Yeah.
you feed off of one another, you grow with each other, and it's just
Yeah.
beautiful. So is that kind of like what has turned into? Because I think I remember seeing something about how you mentioned you had a chip on your shoulder, and so at first you were always like out to prove people wrong, and then now it's like switch. You shed that old way of thinking, and so I'm curious, like what does that look like? I know you said like it's helping people, but I guess I'm curious like what is like a big driving factor for you? Like you've probably hit a lot of your financial success, maybe relationally. Like what does that look like for you? Because there's different forms of success, and I think just curious what that's like for you now.
Yeah, like I realized that about a year and a half ago, where I was like, you know what, like money doesn't even come across my mind anymore. Like I'm making enough. I've pretty much gotten everything I've ever wanted to get. Like there's maybe 1 or 2 more cars that I want to buy. I'm done with my collection. So as far as that, that's completely out of my mind. More so now for me, it's impact, it's legacy, right? And then it's really, if I'm going to talk financials, I want to see the people around me grow. That's why I'm growing my team. I'm giving them a higher percentage split on our real estate deals, and I'm really putting them right. I've created a whole separate thing for my real estate team, and I'm pushing everybody to them. I want to be that person who can kind of you know, like when we would try to reach up to something and we'd put our hand like that and somebody would step on it and we'd give them a
Mm-hmm.
boost. I kind of want to be that, in a sense, where I can utilize my platform to help people grow, utilize my platform to help them get seen and sell their product or grow their business. So I would say like more of a connector, if that's a good word, connector / promoter or something like that. Because I've already built something good, and now it's just I want to allow other people to utilize it. So those are probably the main 3 things that I'm focused on now, man, because that wakes me up every day, that puts a smile on my face, and that continues to allow me to enjoy what I do, because I still spend some time in my real estate business for sure, practically every day. But a lot of my other time now is doing, you know, podcast interviews, doing my own podcast, producing more YouTube content, jumping in there with the people in Modern Success, doing masterminds. So that stuff to me is really what is continuously lighting that fire and keeping that spark going, because it's fun, man. And seeing the change, or me being able to take, as an example, 100 hours of experience with this one thing and talk to somebody for 5 minutes and it clicks for them, that to me is great, because they don't have to go through that 100 hours of grueling effort that I had to go through to teach them that one thing, you know, where it took
Yeah.
me trial and error 100 times to finally get that one thing to click. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So would you say that that's really your why, right? That's your why. That's what you're set out to be in this life, is that you just want to create that sense of legacy for the individuals around you. Is that really what your why is?
I'm glad you brought that up, Eric, because I'm actually releasing a video on this whole why thing, right? I believe more than anything, because I think the concept of why is great. I think a lot of people get caught up too much in it, though, where I see a lot of people like try to figure out what their big why is, and they'll spend 6 years doing that, right? I think a better way for me is I'm very clear about what my purpose is. I think that's a better way to say, because when you have clarity, then it's very easy for you to map out what you want to do and get up every day and do what it is that you do. Now, our why / purpose, whatever we want to call it, I think that's something that people forget is like pliable and flexible. Like it's going to change. You know, you look at my purpose and why, it's had some shifts and pivots over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. So had I just stuck to that original vision, I might have not gotten to where I'm at now, or maybe hit a lot more, bumps in the road, because I would have been too stuck, right? A stuck mind is not a powerful mind. A focused mind is a powerful mind. But when you're clear, you can be focused. So legacy for sure. I'm absolutely clear on that. Impact for sure. Absolutely clear. And those are things that I'm riding with, on the boat right now of Team BC. But I know in my mind that that's also, it's going to move. It's kind of like the ocean. It's going to go up and down. It's going to have some variations, because I think that's really the most important thing for people is, yes, you want to have clarity with it, but you have to understand it may shift as you grow and develop, because as you grow and mature as a human being, and you, again, as an example, rewire some of those beliefs, some of those wants and desires that you had before may suddenly vanish, because now you're a new person.
Now, how did you, at least from my experience, when working with, meditation and getting past beliefs and old ways of thinking, I almost felt like there was like a hangover period, in a way of you're transitioning into this new person, and you're like, this isn't what I wanted, or this isn't how I ever thought it would go. Like, what was kind of that hangover-esque period for you, in terms of like being okay with that shift and now just running with it, rather than like questioning the shift the whole way? Like, did you ever experience anything like that? Or
Constant basis, man, because I think what you're describing is what people call like kind of like I would say a shattering of their old reality, right? And now they have to kind of settle into the new one. And
Yeah.
when you have a change like that, what was once before is no longer going to be there. So there is that shock period. In the beginning, it can be a big shock for people. I would just remember, though, some of my mentors talking to me, they didn't use these words and terminology, but they said, look, man, when you dedicate yourself to this, everything and everyone around you is going to start to change. And in the beginning, it may seem difficult, or it may not seem right, but eventually things are going to settle down. And it's like an upgrade, they said, but temporarily you're not going to feel good. So it was really not too difficult for me to navigate. Was it uncomfortable? Sure. But those voices of the people that I learned from always really stuck with me during those times, because I'm even going through that now. I'm just used to it now. So
Yeah.
those little shifts that we have, you might lose some friends or lose this, and maybe those thoughts of those one things that you owned now is gone, and you're going to sell that stuff. I mean, it's just a bunch of stuff, but I really think that's just a part of life's journey. And when we look at it, even from like an emotional standpoint, for us to be human beings, we have to experience that range of emotions. So we're going to have the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows, and one wouldn't exist without the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we live in a universe of duality. So that, to me, once I started understanding that stuff, I said, hey man, this is all temporary, right? So one of my mantras for these moments specifically is this too shall pass. It's 4 words: this too shall pass.
That's great. That's really good. What would you say in terms of like, obviously it is like you said, a very continuous thing. So where would you say like consistency in terms of, keeping up with the habits that got you there in the first place played a role? Like, what is your, I guess what I'm asking is, what does your daily routine look like now, in terms of keeping up with that, because it is a continuous growth process. It just doesn't stop. The train
Yeah.
keeps going. And so what does that look like, for you, like continuing that journey, that push forward? What is that like?
Yeah. I've dibbled and dabbled with a lot of stuff over the years. For the first 2.5 years, it was just rock solid. Wake up early, like 5:30 every day. Those first, 2.5 years, 3 years, go to the gym right away, get back, shower up, read. Then I was either headed straight to the office or working from my home office, role play, prospecting. So basically from 5:30 to noon or 1 p.m. every day was 3 or 4 hours of me just grinding it on the phones and on the doors, and then doing some sort of reading and workout early in the morning. And that was my set in stone schedule, right? And at night I did additional studying and meditation and exploration and that kind of stuff. But the main things that I stick with now, as we've transitioned, because my time is much more split up into different things, I'm still reading, I would say minimum probably an hour, or probably closer to an hour and a half a day, right? Of some good material. I don't really read, fiction and those kind of stuff. Like, I'm
Yeah,
always
yeah.
usually reading something that I think is particular to my journey and where I'm at. And I have no problem shifting, right? Maybe one day I suddenly get a hunch, you know what, you need to pick up the hypnosis books again, and I'll just start rifling through them again. That, cold showers for sure. I do cold showers virtually every single day. The meditation, at least 20-minute sessions, ideally 30 minutes. I do about a 40-minute to hour-long walk with no phone, out, in nature, parks, whatever. I do that every day. And I try to reconnect, or the programs that I'm still on, other coaching programs, I try to connect with my, mentors or coaches at least once a week. So even if they have their programs running and I can't jump on the live calls anymore, I'm at least going to watch a recording or do my best to get on one of their live calls, even for a little bit, because I like staying connected to the source. And I think that's a
Right.
huge thing that people lose. And I see that all the time. They'll join something or a group, get what they feel they got from it for a couple months, and they leave. And it's like, dude, you can't disconnect from that source, right? You already built a relationship with those people. You learned with them, you grew with them. Stay there. Have some sort of lifeline with that source, because once you disconnect, that's when things start going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's
Shoot.
super powerful, man. And we're coming up to the time where, we agreed on. But the last and final thought, and of course, if Dylan wants to add anything as well, I kind of want to figure out, how do you constantly be so authentic to what you're wanting to be? Because I feel nowadays, like you said, we are conditioned to a certain way, and that can be from like when we're deep rooted into the children stages, So how are you so authentic?
I think the best way to sum it up, and I'll be specific with it. I remember hearing a quote. I don't know who said it or where it came from. I've heard a lot of people say, with great power comes great responsibility. Now, I'm not saying I'm all powerful. However, I know in a sense, my brand and who I am is something in this online space, whatever we want to call it, right? So I feel like the duty and responsibility of what you just described goes beyond me. And I feel like it would be very self-serving and selfish for me to dim my light and message because of, in quotes, how it makes me feel, right? I can't stand the softness that's entered our culture. You know what I mean? So I feel like I have a duty, because I can be that shining example of how people want to express themselves. Now, whether they agree with me on a personal level or not is irrelevant to me. But the fact that there's people that I see that maybe I don't like, but I can admire and say, man, I don't vibe with that dude, but at least he puts his foot down and he stands up for what he represents. I do the same. So the reason I can do it, bro, is because this duty goes far beyond the identity that people call BC, right? To me, this is just a temporary thing that people call me. But that message, that vibration, that frequency of authenticity, which to me is one of the highest ones, I have a duty to that. So to me, that goes far over anything that would be criticism, judgment, my feelings, or anything like that. And if I think more people align with that, we're going to get a lot farther quicker as a society and as a
Totally.
consciousness. And that's, you can say, my opinion, but I truly believe it will benefit mankind a lot more.
That's
that.
cool, man. I could ask you a ton of questions about, some of those bigger topics. So in a sense, you created something bigger, and you connected to something beyond you because you just knew it couldn't just be self-fulfilling. And so,
Absolutely.
where would you say, I guess, summing it up, where would you say the importance of, maybe, because some people might have like a spiritual teacher as something greater than them, or like a religion that's greater than them and connect to source, like where would you say that comes into play with, in terms of recentering yourself to remind you that it's not all about you, and that it's for the greater good, like you're saying, in terms of consciously raising global consciousness?
Yeah, I'm more along the school of thought that I believe there's we are the I in the universal consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're just individual expressions of that, right?
Totally.
And the more we do and are aligned with what I said earlier, in my opinion, we connect more with that, which is the source. And for a lot of people, it could be God, Allah, Buddha, or whatever it is, right? Everybody has a rendition of it. But all in all, and I've read some religious teachings, and I've looked at some of the concepts, and a lot of them are pretty similar when you line them up side by side. Just like if you look at Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, you see the same mirror of those gods and what they represent. So it's all basically a different rendition or version of the same thing, we can say. I think for a lot of people, though, I think religion or some of those figures give them hope, and I really think that, and it kind of crystallizes in a real form to them what we describe, which is something beyond us. Because when we say that without giving it the context of religion, I think to some people that seems too wacky and too spiritual. So when we say, oh, it's like religion and God, they're like, oh, okay, I get that, right? So a lot of times I do use what you said as a reference so they can get it. Because to a lot of people, like the average person, religion is perfectly normal and cool. But if you now talk spirituality, you're a shaman or a witch and you're crazy, right?
Yeah,
So,
Buddhist monk or whatever, whatever they want to call you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny, because that's definitely a trend I've noticed. I was like, they're all the same. I was like, you can call it whatever you want. It's just describing it in a different term that maybe resonates with one person over another, but it's all the same thing. Well, cool. That's really cool, man. I appreciate you for sharing so much about your journey. I look forward to hopefully talking to you more. Definitely seemed like a cool dude. I feel like I know you didn't get to know much about me or probably Eric, so look forward to connecting with you more over, I guess, time.
Cool.
If you guys want to have me on again, just let me know.
Yeah,
That sounds like
definitely.
a plan. So, Bryan, is there any last final thoughts that you want to kind of include, or anything that you haven't?
No, man. I mean, if I'm going to plug anything, dude, we know that this is kind of sidestepping now. Social media, video, doing podcasts, and doing what you guys are doing are very important. I just recently finished up a video marketing challenge. I'm going to do another one starting a week from tomorrow, so the 27th. And, if people want to join that, I recommend they do, because that's really, if we're going to, in a nutshell, talk about this podcast, a lot of that stuff I'm bringing into that challenge, right? I'm trying to condense all these years of making video just to give it to people in a simple fashion, how to be more authentic and that kind of stuff, how to produce content and get it out there. And I'm pushing that a lot because some people are forced right now to only make phone calls in real estate, as an example. And because they have no social media platform, they feel like they have no other outlet to get leads or grow their brand. So that's why I've really been doubling down on helping people create video. It was really requested to do again, to run it back. So I'm doing that second video challenge next week. So I'll be announcing it soon.
Hell yeah, man. Well, hey, Bryan, I do really appreciate you coming on here and taking the time to really educate us from your journey. But on that end, I mean, this is the end of the video. So I appreciate it, man.
Well, thank you guys. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
Later.
Thanks, Bryan.
See ya.